On today's episode, we're going to focus on being where your feet are, and joining us to talk about his journey through football and some of the things that he's learned along the way is the offensive coordinator, tight ends coach at Eastern Illinois, Coach John Kuceyeski. Coach Kuz, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and love what you're doing on a weekly basis.
Well, I'll tell you, I loved watching your clinic the other day on the Illinois High School Football Coaches Association clinic, talking about, basically a package from squeeze formations, and I love that stuff. I know that's something I believe eventually will be up here on Coach Tube, so we'll make sure when it is, we'll share that with our listeners. But Coach, want to talk a little bit before we get into some of the main topics we're getting into today, just your start in this profession, and at what point was it that you wanted to become a football coach?
Yeah, and I think that it started at a really, really young age for me. I was lucky enough to have my father as a high school coach, head coach at Libertyville High School. He was there for 34 years, 18 as the head coach, a Hall of Fame career. And luckily for me, I was able to start learning how to watch film at a really, really young age, and was just inundated with going to practice and then eventually playing for him. And then, went to college, a little bit different path than most. I didn't play in college. I was basically a D3 athlete with D1 vision, and actually had too many head injuries to be able to play in college. And so I decided to kind of pursue a different route and go and work with a team in college, initially just starting out any way I could help in the equipment room, and eventually as an undergrad, running the scout team at Penn State. And as I got toward my senior year, my whole life people had told me, oh, you're going to be a coach, you're going to be a coach, you're going to be a coach. Well, in my own head, I thought I was going to study business or law and make a bunch of money because, I didn't see that for myself yet. And by the time, I got through my 4 years at Penn State, towards the end of it, you finally had that self-discovery for your own self and said, why am I looking to go to law school or study finance when coaching is all I really care about? And to be able to have that little epiphany there my senior year, that's kind of what I pursued and went from, going to Penn State to starting as a volunteer at Northwestern University, working my way into a GA role. And I've been a bunch of places since then, but really it was that aha moment was kind of choosing between law school and coaching. And I knew that the path in coaching was going to be a hard one. I knew that I'd have to work for free or no money. And ultimately I couldn't not do it. And I think that was probably ingrained at me at a younger age than I wanted to say. And the reason everyone always told me I was going to be a coach, but I had to kind of discover that for myself through my own journey.
In rolling down the list of places and your stops so far along the way, some pretty impressive people who you've been able to learn from. If you look back at even those early years, you were at Penn State and Coach Paterno was there, and you mentioned Northwestern, of course, Coach Fitzgerald, but just really, I think you've had some great mentorship along the way. And what are some of those takeaways you've had here, over the years? And you're really, you're early in your career still, but man, I think you've definitely been associated with some greatness along the way so far. What have you learned?
Yeah. And I think it started at Penn State, and I know obviously that different things went down there, and the career maybe didn't end the way that a lot of people saw it for Coach Paterno. But what I did learn at a young age, at least from Penn State, was the fact that the culture there, as far as eating breakfast and a mandatory class and being early, it was 40 years in the making, and it just kind of, it was so a part of, who we were in our DNA, right? And it was just because it was preached so much. And I go from there, the oldest head coach in college football at the time, one of the youngest, and Pat Fitzgerald, and I really got a completely different look at it, right? And Coach Fitz is a detail-oriented person as anybody, but he had this energy that it was just something I wasn't used to, right? The way that practices ran were fast-paced. There was no time wasted. Everything was about having high energy and doing that for the players. And I think that was an awesome to be able to go from one program to the next early in my career. From there, I went to Western Michigan. I had a chance to just a small stop with Coach Fleck, and what I learned from him was just kind of that relentless mentality in recruiting and how he approaches recruiting on an everyday basis. And then spent, really the majority of my young career with Coach Campbell at the University of Toledo, and then going to Iowa State. And I learned I learned a million things from him, but the two biggest takeaways, number one is something that is positive, and it's, he always used to say, it's the Theodore Roosevelt quote, that kids don't know how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that was the basis by which he lives his life every single day, about pouring into the kids in the program where he is, and not necessarily just the X's and O's, but really caring for the people that are there and showing them how much you care and trying to make them better men. And I think that was the positive I learned. The negative I learned as a young coach was just to do your job to the best of your ability all the time. And as a young coach, we had some turnover on the staff, and I thought, oh man, I'm going to have an opportunity here to get on the field, because I was working in an off the field recruiting coordinator role. And I just thought, oh yeah, this is how it works, man. You put a couple of years in, and somebody leaves, and then you get promoted. And it wasn't the case. And I was pissed about it early in my career. I was mad about it. And Coach Campbell and I had a very honest discussion, which he told me, you just got to do the best dang job at what you're doing. That's the only way I'll ever move you into a different role, is if you're just doing the best job ever. And I think at the time I was probably trying to do somebody else's job, or trying too much to look for the next job than actually do what I was asked to do on any given day. And I think that lesson, although it was really hard and it was a difficult time in my young career, was the greatest lesson I've learned to date, and kind of changed the perspective for me and that trajectory in my future based on that conversation. And had an opportunity to go from there to Cornell University in a role. I finally got on the football field to coach a position, which was my goal, and had a great experience at Cornell. First with the running backs and then with the offensive line, and then obviously had a chance to come here to Eastern Illinois and work for one of my greatest friends and greatest mentors in this business, Adam Cushing, and finally get a chance to call plays on my own and kind of live that dream that I was thinking about maybe a little bit too soon, but I was thinking about years ago.
Coach, it brought up some memories for me, and thinking about that, when you take that approach and you quit worrying about what's next, and at the college level, and I've been with some of these guys, even at the D3 level this time of year, getting tied up in scoop and trying to look for that next big jump. I mean, I think in business, it's like the equivalent of trying to become a millionaire overnight. Like, that just doesn't happen. When you take the approach, though, that with whatever role I'm given, wherever I'm at, I am just going to attack this and do the absolute best I can. It kind of, in some ways, takes the pressure off of you. I see so many guys, in Facebook groups or on Twitter, and I want to be this is my goal. What do I need to do? Who has these openings? And I see it, and I just feel, in some ways I feel bad, because I don't think it happens that way. And for me, it was like one of those moments. I'm back in my early 20s, my goal, and I remember writing it down, and it was one of those set it and forget it things, right? My goal was to be a college offensive coordinator. I never specified the level, but I just wanted to be basically a full-time coach, calling plays somewhere. And I remember the day, I did 1 year at BW. I was a quarterback's coach, and the guy who was a coordinator moved on, and coach called me in and told me I was promoted. And I think it was later that day, I was with some friends at dinner, and they're like, well, wow, that's great. You're an offensive coordinator now. What's your goal? What do you want to do? And it came out of my mouth because I had been maybe used to answering it over the years. I'm like, well, I want to be a college. Oh, I don't know. This is it. This is what I wanted to do. I'm here. And you look back and like, wow, look at all those years, and I've just worked hard at this, and like you said, try to do my absolute best. You get there. When you take that approach, you get there. And it's part of, we mentioned one of the main themes today about just being where you are. And I think for you, the way you've evolved before you and I got going, there's a whole element of just personal excellence and a work ethic and routines that you have that I think have brought you along the way to this. And, and I'm sure this for you, this is not necessarily like, okay, this is it, I'm going to retire here. but you're also you're not a guy who's on the scoop this morning looking for, okay, where do I go now?
Yeah, correct. I think that's all part of it, right? Of being where your feet are, right? And like you said, you just got to chase every single day. For me personally, I am trying to be better than I was the day before. I know how cliche that sounds, but that is truthfully who I am. And whether it's come from the way I've changed my diet to my sleep habits to how I work out to the way I game plan, I'm as organized and as detailed in every single after every single season. I go, okay, where could I have been better? What could I have done better for my players, for my staff? How could I have been better? And you know, even this past season, you know, the first season obviously was last fall, but as the first season as a staff together, it's like, how can I get more out of my assistant coaches? Because truthfully, we were burning the midnight oil probably too much, because we were so young on offense, and we were just trying to find a way to get a yard, right? Trying to find a way to get that extra yard. And I saw it taking a toll on my coaches. And so literally, as we went through this off season, we went through what our weekly schedule is going to look like. And I have on our offensive schedule what time you need to leave the office. I said that this is a non-negotiable. You're going to leave at this time. If you want to go home and do work, that's on you. But I am sending you home to hopefully get some sleep, because you know, we preach how important sleep and recovery are, but as coaches, we don't generally live there. I know that there's a cap on how much work you have to do, and so that sleep does go down a little bit. But, you know, you just kind of notice how this profession is, as tough as it can be, can weigh on people. And so for me personally, it's always trying to find like my own personal life hacks to get just a little bit more energy, just to get a little bit more time, a little bit more efficiency so that I can be better for my players and my staff, and see how I can be better offensively. All that stuff goes into each and every day. And I think it's that growth mindset that makes it kind of fun, and to push your own personal boundaries and see how you can be better is something that's a consistent challenge, and really only one that you know whether you're winning or losing.
So, you know, I love that idea that, you know, you got some hacks or things that you've done in when we were kind of coming up with a game plan for this episode. I wrote down and put in quotations here something you said, which was outwork smartly. For you, what does that mean, and how do you do it?
Yeah, and so I'll go two parts of it. I'll go from the schematic point, and I'll go from just the personal. But the personal one, for me, it's all about eat, sleep, and recovery in the way that I pursue my life. Like, I changed my diet to only eat certain things, and just because it was that natural as a coach, you're in the office all day, and it was just too many peaks and valleys from an energy standpoint. And I think I changed the way I live and eat to make sure that I have that consistent energy, and that's something that I do that's probably a little different, and everybody here makes fun of me because they know exactly what I'm going to eat for each meal and at different times, and they, you know, it's kind of like a robot or something, but whatever, they can poke fun because I feel good about it. But from a schematic standpoint, and probably the greatest lesson I learned in year one of calling plays, it's having those targets in the game plan, from base downs. Okay, we're going to carry X amount of plays. We're going to carry X amount of runs, X amount of throws, this many RPOs, this many third and 3 to 5 calls, this many red zone calls. And it actually paring that down. And I had an opportunity at the last convention to meet with some of the greatest offensive coordinators in FCS and FBS, just reaching out personally, like, don't know you guys, but hey, I want to see if I can get better. And I met with some great people and was able to kind of see where their targets were, and found a number that felt really comfortable for me, and one that felt great for our staff. And our staff kind of hates it because they have all these great ideas and all this. And then I put them all on paper, and I said, all right, we got to cut 10 of these passes. What do you not like? And they all look at me, and they're all ticked off because they have a little bit of personal equity in it. But ultimately, the best we played last year and the most success we ever had was when we had the most concise game plans, and it just helps your players. I think too many times as coaches, we try to find all the answers instead of just allowing our players to play fast. So those are kind of the two things, with me individually, but more so from a professional standpoint, is just that organization and just how like concrete those numbers really are, like legitimate targets in the game plan in different situations, so that we can play fast and you can practice them, right? I mean, too many people have so many plays, you can't practice them versus look A, B, and C if you've got 100 and some plays in the game plan. But if you have, a smaller number, then you can actually get it versus all 3 looks, so that when the game comes, you're able to actually succeed in that call.
Amen. It's funny you bring that up. and it's something that comes up with the coordinators I have on this podcast. It seems like again and again, and I'll ask you what the number is, at least in your mind, but it always seems to be dead on within 2 to 3 plays that everybody, these guys who have done it for a while and are successful, are in the same place. So, that base game plan, how many calls go into it? How many do you feel is that a right amount?
Yeah, and you probably know more than me, so we probably got to get back on here and talk about what you found out. But from a regular down standpoint, from a non-situational standpoint, that target's 40. It's 15 runs, 25 throws, and within those 15 runs, we try to limit it to 4 RPOs, like true RPOs, not just throwing a bubble on the backside something, but truly reading a second or third level player. That's been our target. That's been what we've been successful with. Those 25 throws encompass your movement throws, your screens, your drop back, your 3-step, all of it. And so that's that regular down target is no more than 40, and sometimes lower than that, and that's okay.
Yeah. I love that idea about being concrete, and I just wrote an article about it the other day. I was focused on some things that Andy Kotelnicki was talking about at Buffalo and how he thinks about developing a game plan. And I mean, I would recommend to you, Coach, and really anybody out there to check out that article, what he's done. It's on Coaching Coordinator, and for you to maybe reach out to Coach Kotelnicki and pick his brain, because I think he does it really well at Buffalo. The part I put up in that article, though, was an old, and I mean, could have been 80s or 90s, I'm not sure exactly when, hour-long video of Brian Billick talking about their game planning at San
I've watched
Francisco.
it. It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, yeah. And
Yep.
And the one thing, and so this really led to some finding a better way for me when I was coordinating. He talked about their game plan board, and it was a whiteboard. He said, but this is concrete, like the sections of the game plan and the numbers, the slots we have available don't change. We're not going to add more. We have to be concise and be within these numbers. And, I mean, long story short, he had a whole way of getting to those numbers where he studied the previous seasons, and this is how many calls we're going to need in this situation. There's no reason to overplan it. And he was a big guy about overage and not having too much. For me, I studied that thing up and down, inside and out. And from my days before I started teaching, I was still coaching, but I was working at a manufacturing company out of college and was doing production management, and everything worked off Excel. So I kind of became this expert in using Excel. And so we made our game plan board in Excel. And it was that exact same thing like you did. And the approach with our coaching staff was, guys, I can't add any more slots. This template is all laid out. When we put it in here, it scripts it out. It scripts the defenses we're going against out. We only have a certain amount of looks that we're going to be able to work each play against. This is the reality of what we work with. Because, ultimately, you said it, we have to get those plays ready. We have to get those reps in practice. There's only so many reps available. And for me, I became so obsessed with it that it would take me, I really put a lot of time, hours. I mean, probably over the course of the week, just to script practice, 8 to 10 hours. I mean, I was really like, all right, how many times do we get this? Well, I need it against this look. I need it against that look. And then I put it in Excel, and I took away all that grind. So I had these templates I would use, but it all started with, like Brian Billick's, here's my whiteboard, here's my slots. It doesn't change. It was the same on this Excel sheet. Guys, I can't add any because it messes up the formula. So which pass is it? Is it this one or is it this one? Which run is it? Is it this one or this one? And I tell you, like, that process alone, when you have to make those decisions early week and you have to have the right reasons why, really gets everybody on the same page. Because I remember the days when it was kind of looser and you didn't have those things where, especially a young coach, and I'm sure I was in that position myself at one point, my idea didn't get in, and I was, you're a little bit disappointed in that. Now, I think everybody moves on and moves forward together, but like, everybody wants that input. I think this is a good way to have that, because you have not just randomly, I had to cut these, so yours is out. We had those discussions. Mm-hmm. Guys, it's this slot or it's this slot. Which one really fits for us and why? And then, like you said, those concise game plans, it just tightens things up. I think that's so important.
Yeah, I think something you said that was really important, and this is how we approach the situations. And unfortunately, for me, I don't have a long timeline. I only call plays for a year so far, right? But what somebody said that I met with was just kind of studying that 3 to 5 year timeline. Whether you pick 3 or 5, and for the situations, you take the whole season and you look at how many actual 3rd and 8+ calls have there been over the last 5 years in an average game, right? And that should be that game plan target. And so that's kind of how I've approached maybe the 3rd downs in the red zone, the 2 minute. And that also is going to help you with your practice script, right? Like last year we were young, we were down in a lot of games. So obviously we had a lot of 3rd and longs and we had a lot of 2-minute drill, right? Because we were young, and that was probably what I hope to be an anomaly year from a play calling standpoint, just based on how young we really were, right? And I hope as we get this thing going, you get to see what it really looks like. But that, that's kind of how, we projected those. All right, like literally, our quarterback coach is responsible for 3rd and 3 to 5. It's going to be this many calls. All right, this many runs, this many passes. That's how many calls it's going to be. So when he game plans, he knows he might throw, he might have a couple more than the limit, but that gives us some things that we can talk about, look at, and ultimately trim it down to that final list and allow us to play fast, because ultimately it is about practice time. And I was fanatical about studying how many freaking reps are we actually getting in a game week? How many total reps are we getting? Well, if that number, then you look at your play number, and if it's completely different, or way less than the number of plays in your game plan, well, you have issues. And it was a little bit of that in year one. And I think part of that had to do with just being as young as we were and just trying to find a way to have a spark. But I think that was probably the wrong approach in hindsight, was not to do more, but to really focus in on what the heck do we do really, really well? What do our guys believe in? And let's go from there, right? And that's kind of, that hard lesson learned, but, that's what life's about, lessons. So.
Yeah, and I think, the important thing you got to remember as a coordinator too is, these game weeks don't exist in a vacuum. That there's all the work you did in college level, in some high schools, in spring, summer, camp, all those things, over the course of the season, just the cumulative effect of those reps. And I can remember a particular year for me where I went back at the end of the year and we had adjusted so many things that I couldn't find. Like when you say, hey, what's your base? What do you guys do? I couldn't find it. Couldn't find our base plays, couldn't find our base runs. And, and then I looked at the success, especially against the opponents who were the toughest ones, and games where we didn't compete like we wanted to, that we had issues. So you have to remember that, trying to get as much carryover, same as, is so important to the players. And I think that's, something you've mentioned about the way you do things unique to you. I think one of those groups who needs the most consistency are those guys up front, that you have to build things with those guys in mind. And that's the approach that you take when you take a look at how you put together an offense. Talk to us a little bit about your philosophy on making the O-line first.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I had at Penn State, I was working on the defensive side of the ball. Actually, I was working with the defensive line and Coach Larry Johnson, who's one of the greatest coaches in this profession, in my opinion. Obviously, I had an opportunity to get a win last week for the Buckeyes. But, I went from there to going to Northwestern, and, I'd been around defense, played defense in high school, and all of a sudden I was with the offense. I'm like, what the heck is going on? But kind of fell in love with it, the scoring points and just being able to dictate how the game goes, and had the luxury of getting moved specifically with the offensive line and working with Coach Cushing at the time as an assistant coach, right? I was his QC and graduate assistant, and I don't believe that there's a greater position in all of sports than the offensive line. I would tell that to our team. I would tell that to our quarterback, as much as he wants to hear it differently. I don't believe that there's a greater position in any sport than the offensive line. And why do I say that? Just because the 5 individuals working together truly dictate wins and losses. I don't think obviously you need a quarterback that can do something, right? You can't throw whoever out there. But if your O-line can play well and play together, and your O-line can play with confidence, you got a chance each and every week. And I think going to Toledo and working around Coach Manning and Coach Campbell, working around those two who are offensive line guys, I got to see another perspective of how to coach this thing. And what I learned from Tom Manning was just how simple some of the protection stuff was, and how he always tried to simplify it and put those guys in great looks. And it was kind of like he dumbed it down, all the things that you see. I've watched a million, clinics from NFL guys, and there's all sorts of protections. They're carrying all this stuff. And his rules really were just almost like they can't be this simple, can they? Like, can they really be this simple? And obviously, because when you look at offensive line play, it's not about the difficulty of the scheme. Like, you have a simple protection, you still got to block a dude that's more athletic than you. Like, at the end, you're going to block somebody who can run a freaking 4.6 to a 4.8 when you can't even crack 5 and has freakish length and all that. If you're thinking about the protection or you're thinking about the scheme, you don't have a chance. You got to have confidence in the scheme so that you can have confidence in your fundamentals. So everything we do, when I look at it, okay, how many run schemes are we carrying in this game? Where's our protection going? Why are we doing the protection this way? How can we make it easier on those guys? Where can we help them in play action? And because if you don't have that, you don't have confidence up front, whether you're young, old, anywhere in between, really you got no chance. And that's also why, we're a look-based offense and trying to maybe not always get us in the perfect look, but I damn sure better get us away from that really bad look. They got 6 guys up, or they got cover 0 or this, and I'm asking us to run this play. No, they're asking some strange front for us to block it this way. Give them something easy that they can fall back on, know their responsibility, and have success doing it. And that's really where we start from a game planning perspective to how we base out our camps is how many run schemes are we carrying? How are we doing it? What looks are we doing? Let's minimize the looks so it's not this versus this versus this, because too many times, coaches want to run this play out of this formation, this and this out of this formation. Well, to the O-line, that's 3 different plays. And I know you don't think it is as the receiver coach or the quarterback coach, but literally the box is so distinct that it's 3 different communications. How can we make this easier on them? How can we dumb down that look so that they don't have so many calls going into a game?
And I already know your answer to this question, but I think this is a conversation worth having. We're in a day where branding is so important, and the question is, what kind of offense do you run? Now, that being said, I think there's very few offenses that are distinctly something today. I think one is being the air raid, but when you talk to air raid guys, there's really only Mike Leach running the air raid at the major college level. You could talk to flexbone guys, but then I believe there's the different branches of the flexbone. So it's like very hard to me to be able to brand and put your offense in a box. But how do you answer that question, Coach?
Yeah, we talked about it before. I think it's the question you get everywhere, whether you're in a high school recruiting or a clinic or whatever. Even just some average Joe on the streets can ask you that question. And I respond with something that I took from that Mount Union tree. Really, who are we? It's players, formations, plays. It's players, formations, plays, and really finding a way to put your best players in situations to succeed. That's what that encompasses. So I think if you ask me who our offense is, I'd ask you, what year is it? What year was it? Who do we have? We have 2 stud tailbacks. Was the year we had 2 great receivers? Was it when we had a gunslinger quarterback? When we had the greatest O-line in the conference? What year was it? And I can tell you kind of maybe what we did schematically, but who we were will always be players, formations, plays. And I think what's more important than what you do is how you do it, right? It's not necessarily, we're an RPO-based offense that does this, and this, and run stretch. No, it's way more important that I hope when somebody watched my offense that they would come out and say, man, those guys play smart and they play hard. They play smart and they play hard. And I think the how is so much more important then what the heck we're doing, right? I think, you draw it up. If you draw zone read up against the defense, quarterback reads it the right way, running back makes one guy miss, it should score every single play on the board, right? That's football 101, right? You got enough to block and read and make one miss from the tailback, it should score every play. Well, it doesn't score every play. Why? Because of how you're doing it and who's doing it, right? And I think that it's so much more important that, years and years from now, I hope people would say, oh, man, Coach Kuce's guys play freaking hard and they play smart, man. They play hard and they play smart.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's about how you do it. And a lot of that happens, at the college level, Monday through Friday. It's about how you practice. I had the opportunity to go out to Mississippi State's practice just this past August. I guess it was August it was August, late August. They were practicing, getting ready for the season. And, I know the air raid playbook. Everybody knows what, Mike Leach runs, and, he's got it on that little card, so it's not a lot. But, man, you go out to practice and watch how they do it, and there's a specific way that it's done. And as you said, it's about how we do it. When you look at that aspect of it, how we do it, what things do you feel stick out for you, again, that are kind of uniquely you and your coaching staff and your team in the how we do it part?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we talk about all the time is just over-communicating clarity. That's something that we talk about all the time, over-communicating clarity. And what does that mean? It's just making sure that our players know to the nth degree of what the coaching point is, what the play is trying to accomplish, and doing it succinctly. It's not coaching the O-line. It's not giving them 30 words on the field. No, it's giving them a 3-word burst for what you want that fundamental to be. Reach to torque, or you want it to be, whatever it might be. Having those 3-word bursts, you can be concise. The players know exactly what the main thing is, what you're trying to accomplish, and then always being over communicating is something that I think was even another great lesson I learned in year one was just that relationship with the quarterback. I truthfully meet with the quarterbacks after every practice and say, hey, what did you like? What did you not like? Maybe a couple things that, hey, the scout team ran the wrong look. Here's what we're really looking for in this look. And I have the quarterbacks, really give me the call sheet, and they highlight for me, here's my favorite third down and long call. Here's my favorite third and medium call. Here's my favorite red zone call. And those are the first ones I'm calling, because I'm not throwing the ball out there. I'm not handing the ball off. I'm not reading some freak show at the end, right? And I think that comes with the communication portion of it, and just being able to a little bit check your ego as a coach, right? I think, sometimes we think we have all the answers. Well, ultimately the guys have to perform it, and you want them to have confidence in it, and you want them to know where you're going to go with the call, right? The first 4th down in the red zone, here's what we're calling. This is the play we're calling when the game is on the line. How are you going to execute it versus this, and this? And I think it just keeps coming back into over communicating clarity. I think that, obviously I stole that from a coach. Everything that we hear great is stolen, but it really is what we talk about when we talk about the game plan. We talk about how we're practicing, drill work, all of it. How can we just be clear and concise and make sure that the players are confident in the fundamental or the scheme?
Yeah. It reminds me, I had a great conversation on this podcast with Andrew Coverdale, who, he's at Trinity in Louisville, and I think he just won his 13th state championship. He's at St. X now here in Ohio. And one of the things he talked about with his quarterback was his, their little drill they would do every Thursday, the like it, love it list for the quarterback, right? And really basing it on that. And I remember taking that from him years ago and was just always part of it, because exactly like you said, I don't have to go out there and dissect the defense and throw these routes. He does. And while I might think this is the perfect call for there, if there's something he likes better and feels more confident about, and I feel okay that's a good call in that situation, something you have to pay attention to, because we game plan these things in the office, draw them up on the board, work them out during the week, but then we got to throw our guy out there and he's got to do the job. So I think that's an important aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you have to know. One, they have to know, especially if you're a look-based offense, check with me offense. They have to know why you're changing a call to this call, right? Why am I calling this big shot here? Because, we got the coverage shell that we expected, right? Or, what is that critical situation call? Like, it shouldn't be a surprise. It's hard enough on fourth down in the red zone when people are going to blitz your face off to be thinking about what the call is going to be rather than, okay, let me look at, all right, where's my matchup or where's the protection getting checked to, what that might be, instead of knowing, hey, we're going to call this play. And I think it came from a really bad lesson. Truthfully, last year, the quarterback threw a pick, came off, got on the headset with me, and I said, what were you doing? In so many words, why would you ever even think to throw there? And he said distinctly, I'll never forget it on the headset, I didn't like that play call. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, we're in a game, and we practiced it this week, and us as coaches felt like it was great, but you didn't like it. That was a great learning point from him and for me to really make sure from that point on we met daily and said, okay, what do you like and what do you not like? And sometimes they're going to tell you they don't like a play because, of course, the scout team ran the wrong defense, or the freaking snap was bad, or the running back did the wrong thing. And there's times you're going to have discussions, say, hey, stick with it. Let's get another look at it tomorrow. And then there's other times where I really don't like that. Okay, cool. And I delete it right there from the game plan. Boom, gone. And coach asked, why is that play gone? Well, because the quarterback didn't like it. So next.
Yeah.
We got enough good plays on here. Let's find the one he likes. I think that's really important. That communication standpoint from the coordinator to the quarterback, I think, is critical.
Absolutely. Coach, you've brought up a lot of great things already in this episode, but final question is the same as it always is. When you look at all the things that you do as a coach, what's one thing you would really point to as giving your players, your unit, your side of the ball, including your staff, the winning edge?
Yeah, I think kind of what I alluded to earlier. It's all about relationships. That's what this profession and this job is all about, and making these young men better, making them better people, making them better students, better players. All of it. How can I pour into my players to make them better? And if that you can't fabricate it, you can't make the relationship in a week. It comes through consistent effort over time, consistent effort to build that relationship, to find a way to spend time with them outside of the practice field. And I think that's what people and players that play for me would tell you. I think that it's just being there for them and finding what makes them tick individually. And you can only find what gets the best out of your players, how to coach them the right way by just spending time with them and getting to know who they are as people and who they are through the struggles in the weight room and sprints and struggles of fall practice, all of that. But you just have to have a conscious effort towards always building that relationship and putting those relationships first, because that's what's going to get the most out of that player on 4th and 1. And that's what's going to get the most out of that player, as they walk across the stage, getting their diploma and going on to the future to be a husband, to be a father, and all of that. And that's what I think is most important to me, and what makes this staff different here is just, the genuine care to make our young men better people, for the long term. And I think the wins, as I hope, will start taking care of themselves eventually because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe they will. I've had, the unique opportunity to talk with a few of your guys on your coaching staff now. And I was texting with Coach Cushing the other day and said, man, you guys got a great staff together. I've watched this clinic at Illinois. I've talked to some of your guys, and I'm really impressed. You guys definitely are going in the right direction just based on the people you have. So, I wish you guys, the Panthers, the best of luck. Before we let you go, Coach, just want to make sure you share your recruiting area in case there's guys out there who maybe have somebody for you who will fit into your program and your contact for them.
Yep, for sure. recruiting area, I've got the Catholic League in Chicago. I have basically half of St. Louis and then all of Kansas City. And then obviously I watch every single offensive prospect that gets to that offer level grade. So I have a little bit more than I want at times, but that's my recruiting area individually. And then best contact Twitter, it's at coach and then underscore and then Kuz, which is Kuz. So at Coach Kuz with an underscore between coach and Kuz. So.
Coach, I really appreciate your time, and we'll have to maybe have you back on here and dig specifically into some of these offensive topics in the future.
Heck yeah, that'd be great. I really appreciate it and appreciate the content. It's unbelievable, and some things just from this conversation I'm going to go and seek out to try to make myself a little bit better. So I appreciate you.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Please, if you are enjoying the podcast, head over to iTunes or Spotify and click 5-star for a rate. If you have a minute, write a review. It really helps the podcast. Check out our new home for the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. That's at coachandcoordinator.com. And follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.